Hello and welcome. We are live. What is up, everybody? I'm just looking for our sponsored message. We have a special episode today with Ari Gore, the legend himself from ZenGo. We're also the first sponsored episode of the Yalla Bitcoin Breakfast Show. Let's share out this space so that people can start joining us. Mati Greenspan hopefully was not kidnapped by aliens. I do not have any idea about his whereabouts. We hope he's safe and chilling and probably sleeping. Let's just retweet the space. But Ari, before we do, this is the beginning. We have a special giveaway today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, and then we can get into the juice.
Yeah, we do. And we also have some alpha that I think I'm going to share with you before we share with anyone else in the next few hours. So we'll get into it. I'm sure Zango is a self-custodial wallet with no seed phrase vulnerability. And about a year ago, we launched Zango Pro, which has a lot of advanced security self-custody features. We're launching a new feature today, actually. And we're going to be giving away 3 months for free for anyone who attends. I think we have a link for just a quick form to fill out with the special code Yalla ZenGo. Maybe we'll write that there somewhere too. And I'll send you an email in a little bit with a link so you can claim the free 3 months, play around with it, test it, let us know what you think. I love the feedback. The whole team loves the feedback. That's how we continue to get better as a company. If, especially a crypto company, a Bitcoin company is not talking with its customers, I don't know. I wouldn't feel bullish on them in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how many times I've gotten into a company, like working as an employee, and you just get in and you're like, okay, so what do the guys have to, what do our customers say? And it's just like, what do you mean? What do our customers say? And then, well, how do you know what features they want? How do you know what like resonates with them? And it's just wild. And like sometimes it's hard to get customers to talk, but when you have such a something like Zengo, which is being used, in especially in our community, like widely used by a lot of players in the space, like you can ask them. I know we spoke at the meetup about wallets, like having different wallets for different usages. Because like when I open my wallet, like I don't want to see my entire balance on that. Makes me feel like as a person, like my mindset, I like to live lean, and the way I do that is like I open up my bank account and I see a balance that's a lot lower than it should be, and then I'm like motivated to save. I'm motivated to not spend crazy amounts of money, and that's kind of the mindset. So this is it's a new feature that you have on Zango as well. So that's part of the that conversation between the users and the product.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that's what we'll be announcing today. So we're launching multiple wallets today. I will be posting a lot more about it kind of officially once the US wakes up in a few hours. But any pro user will be able to create up to 5 segregated wallets, right? So separate Bitcoin address, separate Ethereum address, all of your other addresses, which adds to a lot of privacy, organization, and security, right? Because you can have your main wallet with just a few bucks. I can't tell you the number of times I've been out. I've wanted to send somebody a Bitcoin, a dollar or two in Bitcoin, just so like, hey, download Zango, try it. I'll send you some money. But I don't want to open the wallet, and you see like a lot more money in there. So now I can have my kind of checking account wallet be the default wallet that appears. The other ones are hidden away, so nobody knows what else I've got in there. And then I can, do the good work of getting more people onboarded into the ecosystem.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I've already seen I've already seen the in the app. I saw this feature. So what are you announcing today? Like it's already there. I
So
guess
what
you're just
we
like
like to
making a
do,
big noise about it today.
yeah, it's just a general best practice, right? Like we'll of course go through a number of cycles of testing internally, of QA internally, of building the app internally, and then sharing it with a few trusted people externally. And then once it's good to go, we'll push it kind of quietly for a week or two, make sure that there's nothing that we didn't catch, that we didn't expect. And then once we're 100% good to go, we do the big marketing push. That's generally a best practice in consumer apps, especially when you're dealing with things that are related to security, to finances, right? In crypto and Bitcoin, I would say no, maybe crypto more. The philosophy for a long time has been like, let's just make things really fast and see how the market reacts. Zango's philosophy is 100% different. We are not generally going to be the first to build something, but when we do launch it, it's going to be the best. It's going to be the most secure, and it's going to be something that the market actually needs, as opposed to, oh, what's the newest chain I can host as soon as possible to get a few people for 6 months until everyone moves on to the next fad or whatever people are focused on. So it reflects our design philosophy, our product philosophy too.
Yeah, so you kind of launch GM to you, AJ, in the house. You kind of launch it, what's called a soft launch, and then
Exactly.
take it from there. Yeah. So we kind of got sidetracked, but first of all, let's give everyone the code. I think there's some people watching, some people that might be listening in. So let's give them the code to get the free ZenGo Pro, and then we'll move on to the bulk of the conversation.
Awesome. Right. So it's just Yalla, ZenGo, YALLA, ZENGO. So put that in when you register. The link requires a name and an email. It doesn't need to be your official name. It can be whatever email address you want. I don't care. I just need to know who to send the unique code to. Then you'll be able to plug that into your ZenGo wallet and claim 3 months for free to test all of the features in ZenGo Pro. And maybe we'll touch on some of those later, but one of them is the multiple wallets feature that we just talked about today. Another one that I love is theft protection. It's more secure than a hardware wallet. We can get into how and why, but it's a really cool suite of security features that traditional wallets simply can't do. And I know we'll talk about this in a little bit, but as an industry, we haven't been doing enough to keep people's assets secure. We're putting too much responsibility on them. That's at least my perspective. And we have to mature, because otherwise people are just going to be buying Bitcoin and ETFs. People are going to leave Bitcoin on exchanges, and they're not going to self-custody. That's the stats that we've seen up until this point. So we've got a lot of work to do, and look forward to talking, discussing, arguing, depending on what people think about that.
Yeah, so I hear you. I think there's a sort of a tension between the responsibility of self-custody on the one hand, on the other hand, making it easy enough and simple enough that people don't trip up stupidly and make mistakes. There's no real responsibility over your money in the Web2 world, in TradFi. If you lose you can't lose your key to the bank. If you lose your bank password, you can go in with your ID and you can sort it out.
Look, we can't create a system that you make one mistake,
you can lose everything.
Yeah. Is that really how we're going to scale? Really? You make one mistake, you lose your mortgage, right? That's not okay. That's not going to work.
Yeah, definitely not. So maybe let's take it back for a little bit before we get into the ZenGo, and maybe give us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the space, because I think it's quite interesting. You came from government, and that is the other side of the spectrum. So how did you jump over the fence to the dark side, so to speak?
I came from, I don't know which is the dark side, right? I came from Yeah, no. So, I mean, my first career, I was a US diplomat for about a decade. I focused on economic policy and mostly in the Middle East. And I never thought I would do anything else with my life. I mean, usually when you join the Foreign Service in the United States, it's really difficult to get in, much more challenging, right, than Harvard, any of the Ivies. And then the expectation is that you're in for life, right? And you work really hard. There are brilliant people who are truly committed to public service in there. And then afterwards, right, you retire with not a great pension, but a pension, which most people don't have in the US anymore. And then you figure out what you're going to do next. But after about 10 years, I decided that it was time to move on. And so I left the Foreign Service in 2020, right before COVID. And I had no idea what I was going to do next with my life. Great. I think one thing you'll see with me is I'm great with my timings. um, so
Yeah,
I,
Bitcoin mooned and the US Foreign Service kind of took a dip.
So I was trying to figure out what to do next. And I had first heard about Bitcoin in 2017. I remember I was at this Christmas party in Jerusalem, and someone came up to me and was like, "Yo, Bitcoin's the next thing. It's like $19,000. It's going to the moon." And I was like, "What is this crap?" Because I have like the traditional background in economics. I have an MBA. I have a background in personal finance, and the person I spoke with was a good person, but didn't, I guess, do a good job. It's not their fault, but convincing me or giving me the beginnings of the learning process, right? And I think we all go through that process when we start out with, wherever you started with Bitcoin or Ethereum or another crypto asset. Some people got started with NFTs. And you kind of go through down a rabbit hole. And my rabbit hole was in the 2020 COVID, right? I was stuck at home. I got onto YouTube. So 3 years later, after 2017, I discovered Michael Saylor, as I'm sure many do, and started listening to him, to Andreas Antonopoulos, the What Bitcoin Did podcast, the Bankless podcast, and started to pull me in. And I had this moment of realization, like, holy crap, this technology is trying to do what we in government have spent billions of dollars doing over the course of a few decades, only faster, more transparently, permissionlessly, and in a decentralized manner. Holy crap, this is incredible. It is completely aligned with my values. Which, by the way, like, I grew up as a center-left progressive Democrat. I am very confused with the political situation in the U.S. right now. Bitcoin is a progressive value. It's a conservative value.
Yeah.
It's, I think, truly like a bipartisan, nonpartisan issue that unfortunately has turned into one in the short term. But like, this is exactly what I believe in. This is exactly what everyone on the left believes in. They just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
I think those on the right and the center have discovered it faster. Holy crap! I have to work in this field. And so I did. Like, the timing worked. ZenGo had recently raised a Series A of about $20 million. I reached out to the CEO. Oriel, he reached out to me. We started chatting. What was supposed to be half an hour call turned into 2 hours, and the rest is history. So just to speed up the story, I've been with ZenGo for almost 3 years. I work as the head of communications, and my job is to be a storyteller, essentially, to tell the story of ZenGo to the ecosystem, and to tell individual stories of customers to people inside of the company, right? To product, to dev, so we can continue to build what people actually need, not, I guess, get really excited about the technology that exists and try to find a way to force feed people to consume it the way that we think people should. And then I'll end with like the last line, which is, right, ZenGo's been around since 2019. We have over 1 million customers around the world. We are different than every other crypto wallet that you've probably interacted with, because we have no seed phrase. We were the first consumer crypto wallet to create a wallet with no seed phrase vulnerability. Instead, we use MPC, multi-party computation. We can jump into the cryptography later if you want to, but we don't have to. But the takeaway is, Dudu, I'd like you to guess how many ZenGo wallets have been hacked or drained since we started.
0. That's the biggest. That's one thing that you guys are good at with the storytelling, and we'll get into that. Like,
exactly.
The thing with Web3 storytelling is there's just so much noise, and it's just like the more complex. And I remember, like, when I first got it started going, like, you try to tell a million stories, whatever, and like things get lost. And like, when you go to, like, when you have land on that one thing that can, like, that can hit, and then you keep nailing at that, just keep at it, like, keep trying to different ways to end off with that line, because now I remember zero where Zango was
Zero.
at, and that's
Absolutely.
like
Yeah.
that's something that's stuck in my brain, and I'm probably not the only one. There's probably a bunch of people out there that also have that heard about that, and if you're tuning in now, Mati's not here to tell you to write to us, so I will write to us. Tell us what you think about Zengo, about Ari's journey. We will get into the cryptography later. We will get into seedless wallets later and storytelling. But first, I want to kind of get you on the politics, because that's obviously your forte, and that's obviously got a lot of uh, implications into what we're doing. And you mentioned that Web3, that Bitcoin is it's the left should love it, the right should love it, the left should love it, the liberals should love it, because it's kind of empowers the little guy. It's free and fair in a way that the big banks are not, which is super ironic. How someone like Elizabeth Warren, that has been sort of anti the big banks for so long, is now the antichrist of Bitcoin, which is that sort of like embodies a lot of the cognitive dissonance on the left today, where liberalism has been replaced with a sort of pro censorship, Marxist ideology. And on the other hand, on the right as well, the traditional right, not the right of as it's manifest, or the right in ideal, which is pro small government, pro capitalism, minimal intervention, no regulation, and that is another virtue of Bitcoin as well. So Bitcoin has something that everyone can take from that. And I think those who support Bitcoin, they show their intellectual honesty, whether it's from the right or from the left. Because if you're a Republican and you're not pro Bitcoin, then you're essentially, saying, "Oh, I support closed walled gardens, banking regulators. I support big government. I support the Federal Reserve." And on the other hand, if you're a Democrat and you're not pro Bitcoin, you say, "Oh, I support." I support the big banks. I support the elite, the billionaire class, as opposed to the little guy. So kind of tell me a little bit about sort of your journey, and you said you're a bit confused now about your politics, but like, how do you
Yeah.
see the race shaping up in 2024, and how do you see that implications on Bitcoin?
Wow, great question. I mean, first, I'm going to be very clear. This is my personal opinion, right? This doesn't represent the company at all. And
Yeah.
and to be fair to how I'm going to frame this for you, right? My background is diplomacy, not politics, so it's going to be hard to pull a soundbite out of me. It's just naturally, I'm gonna. My goal is to make peace, right, between everyone. I think let's look at a few stats of just Americans in general, right? So people love dogs. There are millions of American dog owners. There are even more American crypto holders, Bitcoin, Ethereum. I don't know the exact breakdown of the assets, but more American citizens own crypto than they have dogs. That's number one. Number two, I saw a great poll yesterday that showed the political spectrum of American voters and where they fall in terms of people who own, I think it was Bitcoin, right? Like you would think based on the recent narratives, especially because the Bitcoin conference hosted former President Trump, that it would be heavily skewed to the right. And you've got some centrists, maybe some libertarians, independents, and then like a lot of right-leaning folks, leaning folks own a lot of Bitcoin. Actually, the highest percent of Bitcoin owners is on the left. So this is a truly bipartisan, nonpartisan issue. It kind of goes back to narrative, like you just said, right? You can frame something in one way, you can completely change the framing, right? Either Bitcoin is the network for criminals, where they share all of their stuff on the dark web, or Bitcoin is a permissionless, transparent network where actually criminals don't like to send money anymore because it's too transparent and you can track everything and you know exactly what's being sent. What asset is used the most by criminals? It's actually the US dollar, even today. But that's not what some folks on the left have been talking. Like these talking points are old. They're like a decade old at this stage. So I think we're starting to see, just like we're seeing champions on the right and in the center, we're starting to see champions on the left in the US talk about the American values behind crypto, Bitcoin. And I'd like to think that things will change before the election. But right now, I got to say, it doesn't look like it. We're still waiting to see what the Democrats' official policy position is on cryptocurrency. We now know what it is for the Republicans because they've added it to their platform. I guess we'll find out this week. And unfortunately, I'm not holding my breath, but time will tell, right?
Yeah, I feel you. I'm like there are champions on the left for sure, but unfortunately, you don't hear. They're not in a influential enough position to have an actual impact on policy. And the people that are in influential enough positions seem to have an agenda against us for some reason. And it ties up well. Like I think, for me, what's interesting from a commerce and policy perspective, and that's more less politics, is the kind of the overlap between Bitcoiners and people that support sort of free speech, people that might be, like the other day, Elon Musk interviewed Donald Trump on X, and there was a letter from some EU,
I saw that.
guy.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what his exact position is, but whatever it is, he wasn't elected to it, and he wrote a thing. He's like, "Listen, you got to make sure there's no disinformation over here," and it's just like, the most powerful, wealthy man in the world is interviewing the not Republican nominee for president, and you, the EU, you're warning him about what he can say, what he can't say, and those people, the people who are globalists, pro, get a million booster shots, censor speech and whatever. Those are the people that sort of also gravitate to the CBDC. They gravitate to anti-Bitcoin legislation and the freedom. And I think that's the real dichotomy, and that's the real sort of, if you want to split the world into two camps, that's the real split. It's not sort of left and right. That those things don't mean much anymore. It's between sort of the pro-censorship, nanny state globalist versus the freedom maxis, hyper-capitalist accelerationists that believe that technology is an ultimate force for good, that markets need to regulate themselves in a way, and that government should be made as small as possible. I think that's sort of the emerging split that's happening both in the Democratic and Republican Party and globally in other countries as well.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting time in the world, right? It's no longer kind of, one of the reasons why I wanted to actually leave the Foreign Service was because, being a Foreign Service officer in the 70s, 80s, 90s, even early 2000s was a real big thing, right? Like you represented America, you had power to at least contribute to the policy discussion. And America had an ability to follow through with whatever it wanted to kind of project into the world. And it's no longer kind of, like a bipolar era, right? We've moved into a multipolar era. Things are kind of confusing and gray. And, what used to be kind of black and white isn't anymore. I completely agree with you that Bitcoin could not have come at a better time for a few reasons, right? Not just in terms of like money printing inflation that we've seen around the world. I mean, it's rough in the United States, but still compared to other countries, the US is still the US dollar is still the reserve asset. You look at, gosh, I mean, what double-digit countries seeing double-digit inflation this year and last year. But also, technology gives a power to centralization. So, what's playing out in China, I haven't been there, right? But I've read a lot. I understand kind of some of the ways that you're tracked based on what you do. You have a score connected to you, and you can do or can't do certain things simply because of who you are. That's kind of terrifying. Thank God for Bitcoin, right? Especially now, because as power can be further concentrated in centralized entities, the only way to kind of counteract that is to have some sort of balance, which is decentralization, which is these technologies that can give anyone right? Access to a bank just because you have access to your smartphone. So I'm actually very bullish, of course, on the industry, on our future, and on self-custody, right? That's one of the reasons why it's so important. And I think we have a lot of work to do there as an industry, because most people who own crypto don't self-custody.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
talk about self custody and you know, that's kind of someone brought that up on our last show about the fact that most people in crypto are actually, they don't have access to direct Bitcoin. They're holding ETFs, or they're holding, you know, other different coin. Someone's interested in Doge in the comment from YouTube. Giuseppe Ziema, he's interested in Doge.
Only interested in
Only
Doge.
interested in Doge.
Can you still buy
So,
stuff with Tesla using Doge? I know you could in the past. I wonder if
I don't know. But I did see yesterday Elon Musk. There was Elon Musk tweeted out he wants to be made the
I saw that
Department of
DOGE.
Governmental
Yeah.
Efficiency, and the price of Doge didn't even move. So people are bored right now. Like, you know, in a bull market, that would have rocketed. But Giuseppe, if you're only interested in Doge, you're NGMI, you're not going to make it, because Doge is fun, but it's not BTC. It's not the only reserve asset challenger to the dollar that exists in the world. So, you know, maybe look into Bitcoin if you haven't already. But regardless, Bitcoin, Doge, whatever, self custody, you know, we spoke about that last week, and it's such a crucial part of crypto. And maybe tell us a little bit about, why do you think that most people don't self custody today, and what can be done in order to get the world onto self custody? Because it's a self custody is a mindset shift in how we look at our money. Our money in the bank is not self custody. The bank owes us a liability, and 9 times out of 10 around the world, where you go to the bank, you want to withdraw money, the bank is good to pay you back, right? But if you're in Lebanon, or if you were in Cyprus in 2013, or if you're stuck in, you know, it could happen.
Or you're in Canada. What was that? A year ago?
The
A
trucker
year and a half
protest.
ago? Yeah.
So if you you know, you do something, you know, that the authorities don't really jive with, then just be careful. Like, RRP to your ability to take out money. So maybe speak a little bit about, like, you know, why self custody hasn't, you know, proliferated, why it's not so widespread, and what can be done to change that.
Look, I think that's one of the biggest questions. I was looking for research. Can you see me?
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
just
there we go.
bringing. Yeah,
Okay,
there we
cool.
are.
I was looking for industry research about the percentage of assets that have been self-custodied versus those on exchanges or in um, uh, ETFs. There's not a lot of information out there, which in of itself is a problem, right? Because if it's not being measured, it's not going to get managed, and it's not going to be attacked by an industry. In our research, what we've seen is folks who don't self-custody don't because they're afraid, because they've heard about, right? So before, right, I told you how many Zango wallets have ever been hacked or drained, and you came back with 0, which is true.
Yeah.
And it's like a very powerful, quick, simple narrative that, you know, there's a lot of depth to it, but it's a nice soundbite. So the other soundbite that we started digging into about 2 years ago was seed phrase vulnerability. Right, we used to be called a seedless wallet. It kind of sounds like seedless grapes. Like, that's cute, but that's not a security related issue. But the seed phrase vulnerability is terrible. Actually, I'll ask you a question. I'd like you to guess, in the last 10 years, how much Bitcoin, and Bitcoin alone, just Bitcoin, has been lost or stolen because of seed phrase mismanagement.
2 million.
2 million Bitcoin. Not dollars.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. About 2 million, which is like 140 billion
I
US
think I heard
dollars.
you say this already, but I'm
Yeah.
proud
That
of
doesn't
myself for
include,
remembering.
exactly. That doesn't include Satoshi's first million. That's a very conservative estimate. I was talking to somebody a few days ago who had a seed phrase wallet, lost their seed phrase. That's going to be Bitcoin that's contributed also to that number, right? So the $140 billion is Bitcoin at $40,000, right? We're, you know, obviously, I believe, going to go far beyond that. So we're talking trillions of dollars over time, because a seed phrase is a single point of failure, and people know that. And so they just leave their assets on an exchange, or they just buy the ETF. And instead of, as an industry, us saying the only way to self-custody is a seed phrase, this is how you have to do it. And here's the list of 10 things you need to do in order to not lose it and to not get it stolen and to not get it hacked. And despite all of that, statistically, you will likely lose at least some of your Bitcoin if you only self-custody with the seed phrase. Because of that, people aren't moving to self-custody their assets more. And I am really glad to see more innovation happening in our industry to make it easier for people to self-custody, to use systems that are secure by default, right? So ZenGo MPC is one of the approaches. I know for like EVM blockchains like Ethereum, right? Account abstraction, smart contract wallets might work for at least some of those assets, right? MPC is nice because it can do everything, right? It can do Bitcoin and Ethereum and Dogecoin, etc. But we have to stop as an industry saying this is the only way to do it. Yeah, it kind of sucks. Yeah, a lot of money's been lost. Yeah, if you make one mistake, you're screwed forever. But self-custody, like that doesn't work.
And obviously, what you're saying makes tremendous sense. Now, I don't have a good reason, why seed phrase wallets would be better than ZenGo. I do know that for me, like I'm kind of a bit scared to carry like generational wealth on my phone, which is why I kind of use ZenGo for smaller amounts, and I'll use a hardware wallet for the bulk of it. But obviously, with this new feature that you have, where I can have different accounts, I can hide the balances. That makes me reconsider my position. But what do the skeptics say? Like, what are the people that are like the OGs that are have a ledger from 2020? The first ledger that came out. When you talk to them, and I'm sure you've spoken to them, what do they say about why they're using hardware wallets with a seed phrase as opposed to ZenGo?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is there's no perfect solution. And any company that tells you that their solution is the only solution and the perfect solution is lying to you. So don't trust them. And I would also say don't put all of your eggs in one basket, right? So I would never recommend everybody to put all of their assets just in Zango or just in a seed phrase wallet. I think at the very least, it's good to diversify. So you don't put all of your eggs in one basket. I know most people are probably going to have some assets on an exchange, some in their ETFs, at least for retirement accounts, some in a seed phrase based wallet, and then yes, some in an MPC wallet like Zango. And then you have different use cases for them. The most important thing though is to understand the limits of the system that you're using, because every system has limits and no system is perfect, right? So I think what we saw with hardware wallets for a long time was this perception that, you've got your private key on that device. It never leaves the device. And as long as you leave that device somewhere secure, you're fine. And then what we've seen over time is there are ways to hack at least some of these devices, right? Hack the PIN code to get access to the device. We've seen that even if the device is somewhere secure, where are you keeping your seed phrase? And that's what these hardware wallet companies don't talk about, how to secure the seed phrase backup, because that thing is the one that gets up lost. People take pictures of it. It ends up online, right? There are bots crawling the internet right now, looking for things that look like a seed phrase that will just automatically pull assets from accounts that seed phrase based accounts if they can, right? We see this on a weekly basis. And then what happened with Ledger Recover about a year ago was we as an industry, people, consumers, everyone realized, oh, a hardware wallet is really a firmware wallet. And you can update that firmware and it can change some of the parameters of how that wallet actually works. It's not kind of like this 100% cold, dumb thing that's never connected to the internet. So the first thing is to just understand that system, right? Because I think most people thought that they understood how a hardware wallet worked, and it turned out not to be true. On Zango's side, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think the pin code hacking is cute. I would wonder how someone does that. The firmware makes sense. You're downloading software onto your hardware wallet, and that might be malicious. And then obviously seed phrase, the main seed phrase vulnerability is misplacing your seed. That's honestly the main fear, and that's where Zango shines. So as you were saying on the Zango side.
So in terms of Zango, so how we work, instead of, so let's talk about like how a wallet is built, right? So with a traditional hardware wallet, You have a single private key. It uses hardware on that actual device to generate that private key. A private key is just a long random string of numbers and letters, and it's random enough that no one can sufficiently guess it. No supercomputer can sufficiently guess it for millions, billions of years. That's nice. You have to hope that that private key was randomly generated enough. And actually, we've seen cases where many software wallets in particular, but you never know for sure, hardware wallets could mess up that random generation so you can actually guess it and a computer can guess it and drain the wallet just by guessing what the private key is. That's the problem with a single point of failure, with any system that has a single point of failure. Okay, so at ZenGo, instead of a 1 of 1, we have a 2 of 2. So essentially what a single private key would be doing from a hardware wallet, ZenGo has, think of it like a decentralized private key. So 2 parts in 2 separate places. So the first time you download your ZenGo wallet, something simultaneously happens in 2 locations in 2 different ways. One thing happens on the ZenGo remote server, and one thing happens on your mobile device. Inside of your device's trusted execution environment, or secure enclave if you're using an iPhone. We take advantage of that hardware whenever we can. We also randomly generate a number, but instead of doing it one place, we do it in 2 places in 2 different ways. So by default already, we are more kind of random than a centralized private key because we're doing it in 2 locations in 2 different ways. So even if one of those 2 systems for some reason doesn't work as expected, the other one is randomized enough that the system is secure. And then every time you want to support a transaction, these 2 talk to each other and the transaction happens. That's essentially what MPC is. We have the personal share, which is locked to your device, and then the remote share on the ZenGo server. Only your personal share can initiate transactions and can sign transactions. The ZenGo server can't do that. All of our cryptography, by the way, which is how this is built, is open source. It's available on our GitHub. It's been used, researched by a lot of folks. ZenGo actually maintains, well, it holds the world's largest open source MPC library on our GitHub since 2018. And that's kind of our system in a nutshell. Now, if you're a seed phrase maxi, you don't want to rely on anyone. And you don't like this idea of you relying on the ZenGo remote server in order to sign or help co-sign transactions. And that's okay. If that really is something that you don't want to deal with, you can be, your own CTO and your own CISO and be in charge of everything related to your crypto security. But a lot of folks don't really care about that. They just want to make sure that their Bitcoin is secure. And this system has allowed us to build that for the past 5 years and going. And then on top of that system, we can build advanced features, which maybe we can talk about later, but we can do things simply that like a dumb hardware wallet can't do because we have this security logic built into the way that the 2 secret shares talk to each other.
So let's get into those features because it makes sense to me that, that's kind of the one seed phrase maxi argument to the ZenGo share. But you guys have a very deep and thorough, material out there on what happens in the event that ZenGo, God forbid, goes bankrupt and disappears. That share is still secure. But what about those added features that are made possible by the MPC?
Yeah, so great point. And first, I'll touch on that for a second, because people have that question, and that's a completely legitimate question that you should be asking. Like, okay, great, I rely on the remote server to co-sign my transactions. What happens if the remote server goes down, stops working, right? So then we have like a short-term question and a long-term question. Short-term question is simply about network stability and operationalizing any smart fintech or crypto product in this day and age. And the short answer is we have a lot of redundancies built into the system. We work with the best-in-class infrastructure providers to make sure that whenever you go to use your wallet, you don't have any issues. I know this past week there was a display issue with phantom wallets in the Solana blockchain. Everyone freaked out. They thought that all of their assets were drained. It turns out that it was simply a display issue. But these things really, really matter, especially as we start to go into what I hope is a long and extended bull market. You'll have right? A lot of people start using their apps that they haven't been. You'll have a lot of newcomers. That puts a lot of strain on the infrastructure, right? We've even seen Coinbase, I think mostly the centralized exchange, go down sometimes. They're also building out more robust infrastructure. We all have to do that to make sure that whenever someone wants to use your app, you can and you don't have any issues. And then the longer term question is, okay, what happens if ZenGo were to shut down? So we built into the system, we spent a year as a company building this process and our cryptography before we even launched the first version of our app in 2019. We built a system called guaranteed access, which essentially makes sure, this is the short version, that if the ZenGo server stopped working, your phone would go into guaranteed access recovery mode, and it would walk you through a very simple few steps to allow you to essentially bring those two secret shares together, which would turn into a traditional private key. And then you can use that private key to import into any traditional seed phrase private key based wallet. You were asking now about the advanced features, and that's where ZenGo really shines. So ZenGo Pro, we launched about a year ago, and we've done things that no other wallet can do. We were the first wallet to build inheritance into every single ZenGo wallet. So we have legacy transfer, which is an inheritance style system. So basically, all of your Bitcoin, all of your NFTs, all of your ETH, everything inside, all of your Dogecoin. I know that we've got a big Doge fan in here. All of your assets inside of your ZenGo wallet can be received at a set time in the future based on conditions that you said and only you have control over. So basically, you go into your app, you assign someone as your legacy recipient. They have to go through a process on their end, which is very simple in order to kind of accept, right? You need to make sure that there's kind of like a co-acceptance to this because we don't want to take any chances that this person doesn't know what they're going to be doing. And then you finalize the system. And then you set this kind of timer bar and you decide when you want the system to consider your wallet inactive. So after an inactivity period of, I think it's between 4 months and 2 years, then the system would actually, legacy transfer would go live. So what does that mean? You don't use ZenGo for 6 months, you don't go into your app, but you've sent it for 2 years, nothing happens. And all you need to do is go back into your app at least once and it resets the timer to 0. But let's say something happens and you set it for a year, you know, a year from now, that whoever you set as your legacy recipient would be able to gain access, to start the process to gain access to the account. The cool thing about this is it's fully self-custodial. It requires no KYC, and the assets remain on-chain the entire time. Oh, and you can always cancel it. Let's say, you know, you've got your partner, you've got your husband or your wife, and you get divorced and you're like, screw this, I don't want them to get it. You can cancel that, which you can't do with a seed phrase, right? If you gave somebody a seed phrase for safekeeping, they could lose it, they could get it stolen, they could just not give it back. There's no takebacks with a seed phrase, but with the server logic and the security logic of MPC, we can build that in.
Yeah, for me, it's you know, I saw someone, financial advisor on LinkedIn. He's not a Bitcoin guy, which means like it's a malpractice, honestly, for financial advisors to not at least understand Bitcoin. But he had a whole post about like a what to do if I die note, and for me that's like something I think about obviously more often than I have to in the situations that we found ourselves in the Middle East, and like you know, obviously you want your wife and child to have access to the coin, especially now. Like now it's very important. Okay, you have some Bitcoin, but in 15, 20, you know, when my kid hits 18, like he needs to be able to access that. So, you know, legacy transfer is something that, you know, I think about very strongly, and that's very cool. I think we covered quite a bit in this segment of, you know, MPC, how it works, the advantages over seed phrase, ZenGo advanced features. This will be an excellent little, you know, 20 minutes to cut and include on the show. But before we move on, I want to take it to some words from our sponsors, and then I want to talk about narratives in the Web3 space, because that's essentially what we came here to do. So this is a word from our sponsors. Is you know, we're sponsored by DLT Law. DLT Law is your one-stop shop for all things that you need in order to build responsibly. Experts in fintech, regulatory compliance, and blockchain legal services worldwide. Crypto, DeFi, NFTs, DLT Law develop delivers creative solutions for your most complex legal challenges. So take him out, check him out, scan the QR code, or use the Yalla DLT promo code for a free 30-minute consult with them. Obviously, I will get better at the sponsored section as we move along, but we haven't really been sponsored before. Let's move on to the last section of the show. It's been an excellent almost hour. Mati, we miss you. We have to have Ari again, so Mati can lob questions at him. I think Mati's
Yeah.
a C phrase maxi, so it's always
I
good to
love
have
it.
one of
It's always more
those back
interesting
and forth.
when there's
When
a
people don't agree,
disagreement.
100%. 100%. I'm not, for me, like I have things that I believe in strongly, but the one thing I believe in strongly, stronger than most, is that, good conversation beats out being right. So that's always it happens from the tension, and then there's always a third way. There's A, there's B, and then they meet together, and C, that, there's always a third way that combines the best of both, and kind of transcends those two dichotomies, and that's usually
Yeah.
what we try and get to. I want to ask you about storytelling, and that's a very everyone always wants to look for the next narrative. What's the narrative? So, tell me about what kind of how you see narratives in the space, like why are they so important? Why is the content of the narrative so important? And more importantly, the question that I've had over the last week, but more generally, is does narrative follow price or does price follow narrative? As in, is there are there stories that organically pop up? Different narratives that people gravitate towards, and those then drive up different coins up and down, or is it the other way around? The coins first fly, and then people retrofit narratives in order to help them make sense of those movements.
Yeah. Narrative until it like hits reality is the only thing that matters. And narratives are super powerful in framing how people understand whatever you're talking about. I'll give you a great example. I was thinking about this yesterday, right? So what was this, about a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, when the yen carry trade in Japan kind of broke and everything kind of went crazy for a 24-hour period. I think it was on a Sunday, right? So it was about a week and a half ago. It was a Sunday. And what happened to Bitcoin? Bitcoin went down. So did Ethereum, so did other assets. And so the first reaction, the first narrative was, oh, see, you guys were wrong. Bitcoin isn't a flight to safety. And that was, kind of frustrating. And a lot of people kind of talked about that for a news cycle. And then the response came in, which I thought was brilliant. And it was, no, what we saw was a liquidity crisis. And Bitcoin is the most liquid asset in the world. And Bitcoin is available 24/7, 365, even on a Sunday. You can't access liquidity from your stocks, from your ETFs on a Sunday, especially if you're a regular person. You can't access your bank on a Sunday for most people, right? What
Right.
can you access? Bitcoin. And as soon as I realized that, I was like, wow, what a brilliant reframing. But it's not a reframing, right? It's a different analytical perspective, and one that I buy, and one that I appreciate, because if anything, it just shows how powerful it's going to be in the future, as these things happen more and more. So that's just a great example of like how powerful narrative is and how important it is to kind of get the narrative right, because people do build off of that. I think we
Interesting.
have,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just I thought your thought was finished, but you were telling like what makes a good narrative? How do you build how do you look at you know building
Look, I think,
narratives in Zengo? Like how do you kind of I think for me the challenge with narratives always when you have a Web3 project, whatever it might be, is on the one hand you want to have sort of a consistent story that you tell about your brand. On the other hand, there's different trends that pop up on a daily, and you want to find a way to sort of not ride those trends or kind of interweave with those trends. So how do you kind of keep both of those things in mind to build a great brand, a great brand
Yeah.
narrative?
Well, I'll tell you what we do now because I can tell you what we did wrong. Like what I did wrong too when I joined about 3 years ago. When I joined, when most of the marketing team joined, the Zengo wallet was this cute wallet, and we had bright colors, and the user experience was delightful, and it was simple, and it's much easier than other wallets, but it didn't feel more secure than any alternative wallet. And it took us, I would say, 6 months to a year to really sit with the research team, to talk to our CTO, understand the cryptography. Because, right, I'm not a cryptographer. I love to talk to them. They are brilliant people, but that is not how my mind works. And to truly understand what differentiated Zango from all of the other players in the market. Because I can tell you, especially during the last bull cycle, every day, it felt like every day there was a new wallet. Oh, cute, a new wallet with these colors. Oh, cute, a new wallet that does that. And right, that was the narrative. Embedded wallets was a thing for a while, which I think are personally mostly a waste of time. What do we do better? And then we recognized, oh my God, we have all this incredible security technology built into the infrastructure that we are not surfacing in any way. That is a huge mistake, especially when that's one of the biggest problems with self-custody today. So we went through this very intentional, iterative process over the course of about a year of making sure that we were better aligned between what the app, what the product actually did, and how we would tell the story about the product externally, how we would externalize that, right? So now, right, Zango, we changed our logo, we changed our colors, they're darker. They better reflect this sense of security that the app can actually provide. And then on the product side, once we had the infrastructure, we decided to double down into security, right? Which is what Zango Pro is mostly focused on, right? The inheritance stuff, theft protection, multiple wallets. We'll be building and launching something that you've been waiting for in about a month from now. I can tell you about it. I'll send you a DM in a few weeks. But like, that's obviously where we need to be, especially because the market, other than Zango, isn't really providing that solution. So then the question is, okay, everyone in the market thinks that the only way to self-custody securely is with a hardware wallet, with a seed phrase wallet. So now I've got a very limited budget. I essentially have no brand budget. Competitors are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on hype campaigns. I don't have those resources. We're spending our resources on the product, not on the marketing. How do we get this out there in a way that really resonates? What's the narrative that we can build that shocks? And our answer was the Zengo Wallet Challenge, which we launched this January, which was by far the most successful campaign we ever had. That I still, on a weekly basis, have people coming to me saying, wow, Ari, that was super cool. What was the challenge? We put $500,000 of Bitcoin and an NFT in a regular Zengo wallet, and we invited the world to try to hack it. It was 10 Bitcoin at the time, and it was a Pudgy Penguin NFT, which was worth about $50,000. And we even gave away some of the hints related to recovering the wallet. We had over 200 attempted hacks. Some were kind of silly and surface level. Some were very deep and private, and our tech team and our research team knows about them. But what was the result? No one successfully hacked the wallet. Yeah. Exactly. Put your money where your mouth is, double down into what you're building, and then the market will react. And we've seen that. We've really seen Zango get the recognition over time of this secure by default, no seed phrase vulnerability. Now, I know that there's going to be seed phrase maxes, and if Matti was here, we'd be talking about that. And like, there is a place for them at the table, but it should no longer be dominated just by them moving forward. That's our main narrative that we've been pushing, and it's not easy, but we will continue to push it. And I think over time we will win.
Epic. Thank you so much, Ari, for your time. I mean, I love that campaign as well. I think it's a, bug bounties are very, very popular in Web3. I mean, the second you bring in developers, like, there's obviously a hierarchy of users that you want interacting with your brands, and like developers are usually at towards developers connectors, like, not just your average Joe, are usually at the top of that pyramid. So bringing those developers in is crucial. But congrats on that campaign, and thank you so much for your time. uh, and we will see you around. The last but not least, Yalla Zengo, use that code. Let's run the banner a little bit. 1 second. Use that code. I'm very curious to see how many people sign up. We're still obviously building up the Yellow Bitcoin breakfast show, but this is a, and we'll have it more about this next week. I'm hopefully getting some more people on from Dubai. The Yellow Bitcoin, we start off as a kind of an organization within Israel to grow Web3, to grow the community. And the ultimate vision that I have for the good community is sort of the Abraham Accords on chain, which is basically using, right now we're Israeli, we spotlight Israeli companies, Israeli founders, Israeli builders, and we have good results. People can hire one another, people use one another's product, and it's, we foster a beautiful sense of camaraderie and friendship, and we want to expand that to, obviously global, but with a special emphasis on the Middle East, because Web3 and building and innovation and technology can be the bridge that unites us, that takes us away from the harsh realities of war and puts us in a better place. So that's sort of where we're going with that, and it was a really cool chat to you, because you come from that place of making peace, and this is what we're about here.
Amen. That's all I got to say about that. That's awesome. And thank you for having
Cool,
me. It was a great discussion.
cool, Ari. Let's go. Have a wonderful day, everybody.